Episode 19 of Behind the Line. I'm your host, KC. Follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. In my life, I try not to overreact to anything. Sometimes it can be difficult. A couple of weeks ago, I had two of my guys at work that were basically not getting along. They were having big arguments, disagreements. At the time that it was all going on, it seemed like a huge deal. Because one of them was threatening to go to corporate, go over my head, and go to upper management. Which basically would have started a huge shitstorm. Big problems. Eventually, cooler heads prevailed. 2 to 3 weeks go by, all is forgotten. Whole situation ended up not being a big deal at all. I told you guys on Saturday's podcast that my favorite play of the week was Baltimore getting 3 points at home against the Patriots. I thought Lamar Jackson would be the first real test of the season for this top-ranked New England defense. And I was right. However, I didn't expect to see what we saw Sunday night, which was complete domination. Now, would it be an overreaction to say that New England's defense is overrated? Not nearly as good as the stats show up to that point? Would it be an overreaction to say that the Patriots as a whole are overrated? I don't think so. A top-ranked defense doesn't give up 155 yards rushing in the first half. The Ravens were imposing their will that entire game. New England had given up 61 points first 8 weeks of the year. Gave up 37 Sunday night to Baltimore. They couldn't stop Mark Ingram. Couldn't stop Lamar Jackson. They couldn't fucking stop anything that Baltimore was doing. However, what's more troubling to me, and the reason that I don't think it's an overreaction to this New England blowout loss, what's more troubling to me is the play of Tom Brady. And this has been going on all year. I don't recognize Tom Brady anymore. I'm used to him being invincible. He looked like Sam fucking Darnold Sunday night. 6.2 yards per attempt. 3.85 yards per attempt against Buffalo. 5.5 against the Jets. Who the fuck is this guy wearing number 12 for New England? That interception that Tom Brady threw to Earl Thomas was a complete head scratcher. This has been going on all season. At one point earlier this season, Tom Brady had gone 3 straight games with a red zone interception. Unfathomable. The Patriots have had the easiest schedule in the NFL up to this point of the season. We talked about it Saturday morning. Dolphins, Jets twice, Redskins, Giants, Browns. That's some elite fucking quarterbacks right there that they're going up against. Luke Falk. He keeps opposing defenses up at night. Defensive coordinators are so scared of Baker fucking Mayfield. I feel like that we've given the Patriots a pass, myself included, based off of their past. This is the best 18 to 20 year run we've ever seen in the NFL. Hell, that we've ever seen in professional sports, period. But this year, it feels different. This isn't the same Tom Brady. It appears that Father Time has finally caught up to him. Now, the Packers were blown out Sunday afternoon. I'm not going to overreact to that loss. We'll get to that later. That happens once or twice a year to great teams. They have a bad day. But I think New England was exposed Sunday night. This soft schedule is about to get real difficult. At Philly, Dallas, at Houston, Kansas City, Buffalo. If this defense couldn't stop Lamar Jackson, who isn't exactly a great passer at this point in his career, how are they going to stop Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes? All season, we've been hearing about how great this New England defense is. Comparisons to the 85 Bears or the Steel Curtain in Pittsburgh. I don't remember those defenses giving up 155 yards rushing in one half. I don't remember those defenses being dominated by an average passer, though Lamar Jackson's improving in the passing game. If I'm Bill Belichick, I'm really concerned this morning. This team wasn't even competitive. They were down 10 points in the first quarter. Scored 0 points in the fourth quarter. When is the last time Tom Brady has scored 0 points in the fourth quarter when he's playing from behind? One of the most clutch quarterbacks that we've ever seen shut out in the fourth quarter. And it's not like this Baltimore defense is great. They're middle of the pack in nearly every statistical category. They gave up 530 yards to Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland fucking Browns. Don't get me wrong, I'm not counting out Brady and Belichick. The NFC is loaded. We know the three best teams in the NFC. But in my opinion, the AFC is wide open. Not really any team that jumps out to me that I can say they're an obvious Super Bowl contender. Kansas City struggles defensively. Buffalo can't score. Indianapolis, they look great one week, they look shitty the next. But we're 9 weeks through the year, and I haven't seen Tom Brady be Tom Brady. With one of the weakest schedules in the league. It's going to be interesting to see what happens over the last half of the season with the Patriots. All right, let's get to the good, the bad, and the ugly from the past weekend. I'm going to start with the NBA. I hear people say all the time that the NBA regular season's monotonous. There's too many games. The season doesn't really start until Christmas. I couldn't disagree more. I love the NBA regular season. I think it's interesting to watch a team grow, or sometimes regress, from October to April. And one of the reasons I love the NBA regular season so much is because of games like we got on Friday night. A random Friday night in early November, and the NBA gave us a classic game between the Lakers and the Mavs. It might be one of the best regular season games that we see all year. LeBron James and Luka Doncic put on a show Friday night. Even though Dallas lost, it was like a passing of the torch moment from LeBron to Luka. LeBron even said after the game that Luka's one bad motherfucker. He isn't there yet, but Luka Doncic is on his way to becoming the best player in the NBA. He will be the successor to LeBron's throne. But LeBron isn't quite ready to give up that throne yet. He was absolutely sensational Friday night. Triple-double, 39 points, 16 assists, 12 boards. Danny Green hit a clutch three to force overtime. But my stance hasn't changed on the Lakers. As great as LeBron and Anthony Davis look together, this team has no depth. Both guys are playing big minutes. Both logged 43 minutes Friday night. And AD tends to get lost in the shuffle at times. He completely disappeared in the fourth quarter Sunday night against the Spurs. Took 3 fucking shots in the fourth quarter. But I can't argue against the record right now. Lakers sitting at 5-1 atop the Western Conference. But I think that the depth issues will start to show as the season progresses. LeBron's going to be 35 in December. We've talked about this before. I know he's in great shape. But can we really expect him to play 35 to 38 minutes every night? We had Gerald Burgay on the podcast Saturday, and we talked about the Lakers' depth issues, and just in comparison with the Clippers. The Clippers beat the Lakers without Paul George, their second best player. Clippers have depth. Kawhi or Paul George can sit out, and they can still win. Without LeBron, this Lakers team cannot win consistently. I've said it before. Anthony Davis can't lead a team. I watched him 7 years in New Orleans. It's just not in his DNA to be the alpha on the court. All right, moving on. Next up in the good segment. I've been talking the past couple of weeks about Phillip Rivers and the Los Angeles Chargers and their annual quest to save their season. Damn if they didn't make a statement Sunday against the Packers. Chargers have a great defense. I've mentioned it several times how the issue for this team all season has been the turnovers on the offensive side of the ball. 0 turnovers against Green Bay. The Chargers defense set the pace the entire game. They were giving Aaron Rodgers nothing. Rodgers was an MVP candidate entering week 9. and the Chargers held him to 139 yards passing. At the beginning of the fourth quarter, Green Bay had less than 100 yards of total offense. Sitting at 4-5, Phillip Rivers is once again starting his midseason surge to push for the playoffs. I really like this Chargers team. Melvin Gordon is getting back into his groove. They got a top 10 defense, Hall of Fame quarterback. They got huge games coming up the next couple of weeks against Oakland and Kansas City. Looking at their schedule, they have a really good chance of finishing up at 10-6 and making the playoffs. In his post-game press conference Sunday, Aaron Rodgers said that this was a good loss for the Packers. He said they needed a nice slice of humble pie, that maybe his team had started to buy into their own hype. I think that's bullshit. This was not a good loss. I don't think it's time to panic in Green Bay, but I don't think this was a good loss. They were completely dominated on both sides of the ball. Green Bay is in a dogfight right now with New Orleans and San Francisco for the number one seed in the NFC. They're now 1 game behind New Orleans and 2 behind the 49ers. Home field is going to be huge for the playoffs in the NFC. If New Orleans gets the number one seed, it's over. You're not going into the Superdome and beating the Saints. The same goes with Green Bay. You're not going to go into Lambeau and beat Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. I think that this loss is going to have a major impact on Green Bay's season. I don't agree that with Aaron Rodgers, that this loss was a good thing. All right, let's get to the bad from the weekend. Only one thing in this segment this week. We don't talk about the UFC much on this podcast, but I'm a big fan of the UFC. UFC 244 was held in Madison Square Garden Saturday night. Lots of hype going into the event. It was a great card up and down. Huge main event with Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz for the BMF belt. The crowd was electric in the Garden. We get through 3 rounds in the main event between Masvidal and Diaz. And the fucking doctor stops the damn fight because Nate Diaz has a cut above his eye. A cut that happened in the first round. A cut that's been there since his last fight in August. I was fucking pissed. I understand the doctor's job is to protect the fighters. I get that. That's the most important thing. I get it. But this to me was I don't want to say inexcusable, but for lack of a better term, that's what I'm going to say. I didn't pay $80 fucking to let some fucking doctor determine the outcome of the main event. Nate Diaz seemed fine. He said he was good to go. This is one of the main problems I have with UFC and boxing. Take the Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao fight from a few years ago. Paid $100 to watch that fight, and it was boring. Nothing entertaining about that fight. A big complaint back in the 80s and 90s about Mike Tyson fights were that they were over early in the first round. The difference with the UFC is that most of the undercard is very good. Boxing undercards are pretty much useless. However, we're still paying the money for the main event, mainly. In most cases, anyway. And to pay $80 to get through 3 rounds in a great fight, only for the doctor to stop it, is just bullshit. I didn't like it. All right, let's move on to the ugly. There were a couple of egregious things this past weekend. I'm going to start with college football. I'm to the point right now where I'm just completely over college football. There's never any news, never anything to talk about on Monday about what happened on Saturday. You tell me, what's the biggest story of college football this season? Nothing. In my opinion, the biggest story in college football is how boring and meaningless this season has been. The NFL, I can name big stories in the NFL off the top of my head. Tom Brady struggling. The mess in Cleveland and New York with the Jets. The 49ers being undefeated. I could go on and on. Same with the NBA. I can't do that with college football anymore. Used to be that way. Another boring, meaningless Saturday. There wasn't one good fucking game. Utah and Washington, that was an okay game. Other than that, it was a snooze fest on Saturday. The biggest story coming out of the weekend was the Florida State players fighting with Miami. Who gives a fuck? Florida State's irrelevant. So is Miami. I tried to watch Oregon USC Saturday night on Fox. Put me to sleep. I ended up turning it over to the UFC undercard on ESPN2. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse complaining about college football because I've been doing it all year. But I can't be the only one that finds it this boring. Not too long ago, it used to be exciting. The mid-afternoon games on CBS were classics a lot of the time. Same with a lot of the night games that they had on ABC. When is the last time that we've had a classic college football game? Until they start punishing these teams for these weak schedules, nothing is going to change. I'm starting to think that the playoff system is actually hurting college football more than it's helping it. The BCS sucked. It did. The BCS was terrible. But at least the algorithm or the formula or however the fuck they figured it out, at least it punished teams for weak scheduling. We were getting a much better product on the field with the BCS system. What we're watching every week now in college football is dribble. It's hard to sit through an entire college football game. All right, moving on. Jesus Christ, are things getting uglier by the week for the New York Jets. Miami was supposed to be the bounce back game for this team. They didn't even show up to fucking play Sunday afternoon. Don't let the final score fool you. The Jets were blown out Sunday against Miami. This pathetic Jets offense couldn't even score a fucking touchdown in garbage time. The Dolphins were playing prevent defense, leaving the middle of the field wide open. The Jets still couldn't get in the end zone. This was as bad of a performance that I've seen from an NFL team all season. And the fucking Dolphins have put up some bad games. But at least this team appears to try to be trying. The Jets made Ryan Fitzpatrick look like Drew Brees. Sam Darnold, against the worst defense in the NFL, against the Dolphins defense that has been carved up all season long against every quarterback that they've played, couldn't figure out this tough Dolphins defensive scheme. Sam Darnold couldn't hit a fat bitch with a cheeseburger Sunday afternoon. Head coach Adam Gase was asked after the game if he was embarrassed by losing to a Miami team that, for all intents and purposes, is clearly tanking. His response, quote, "It's the NFL. You can't be embarrassed by this shit," end quote. Really? Obviously, Adam Gase doesn't embarrass easily. If you're not embarrassed losing to the worst fucking team in the league, then what the fuck are you embarrassed by? The Jets sure know how to pick their head coaches. Rex Ryan wasn't embarrassed a few years ago when it came out that he had some weird-ass foot fetish. And Adam Gase isn't embarrassed getting his ass kicked by a team trying to fucking lose. Your team can't even beat a team that is trying to lose. How Gase still has his job is beyond me. I thought he would be fired before leaving the field Sunday. I roast Freddie Kitchens all the time for having no clue what he's doing. Adam Gase might beat him out for the worst coach in the NFL. This guy doesn't have a fucking clue. I thought he was supposed to be some kind of offensive mastermind. That's what they said when they hired him. Only thing offensive about his offense is his offense. The Jets suck. Sam Darnold has regressed. They can't run with one of the best running backs in the league in the backfield. They're penalized to death. 10 penalties against Miami on Sunday. Poor use of timeouts. Actually, at one point, he wasn't even using his fucking timeouts. Bad play calling, lack of execution. You name it, the Jets are bad at it. All signs of bad coaching. All signs of a head coach that has no idea what the fuck he's doing. The team should have left Adam Gase in Miami. Please go back to coaching the Dolphins. Leave us the fuck alone. How bad does that Cowboys loss look right now to the Jets? Unbelievable. But Dak Prescott is a $30 million a year quarterback, right? Couldn't beat a fucking defense that made Ryan Fitzpatrick look like the second coming of Peyton Manning. Alright, going to close out today with a regular offender in the ugly segment. If you've been listening to this podcast regularly, then you know who I'm talking about. One of my favorite teams to decimate on a weekly basis, the Cleveland Browns. Much like the Jets, the Browns entering Week 9 were supposed to bounce back. I mean, they had the Denver Broncos. Unfortunately for the Browns, Joe Flacco was injured. So they had to go up against a guy that had never taken an NFL snap in Brandon Allen. And for the fourth week in a row, the Browns looked like a discombobulated mess. Bad use of timeouts in the second half. Cleveland had 0 timeouts left with 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. 4th and 1 at the goal line, down 5 points, third or fourth quarter. I think it's late third quarter. Instead of kicking the field goal, Freddie Kitchens decides to quarterback sneak tiny-ass Baker Mayfield. Of course they don't make it. Then he challenges the spot like a dumbass and loses. Next drive, 4th and 4 in Broncos territory. Still down 5 points. Baker Mayfield misses Odell Beckham. If he would have led him, then the Browns had a sure touchdown. Instead, Mayfield throws behind him a little bit into double coverage. Game is over because the Browns have no timeouts left. Then after the game, Cleveland safety Jermaine Whitehead, he decides he's going to go on social media and he threatens to kill someone. Real nice. That's what I like to see out of my starting safety. Threatening violence to fans on social media. He was upset because he was getting dragged for his awful performance. He was ran over by Denver tight end Noah Fant en route to a 75-yard touchdown. Had several other missed tackles. Instead of taking ownership, he follows the lead of his quarterback and does what Baker Mayfield does. He blames everyone else. He no longer has a job. Browns released him shortly thereafter. Week after week after week after week, it's something new out of this Cleveland team. If I see one more fucking commercial with Baker Mayfield, I'm tossing my television into my pool. You know what I want my quarterback to be good at? Completing passes. I don't want him to be good at producing shitty commercials. Think about this for a second. Going into this season, there were people predicting the Browns to win the AFC North. This was a surefire playoff team with all this talent around them. If you didn't believe it, just listen to Cleveland, because they told us all summer how great they were going to be. We are midway through the year, and the Browns are one game better than the Dolphins, the Redskins, and the Jets. Those three teams at least have somewhat of an excuse, but Cleveland's loaded with talent. At this point, is it really necessary to let Freddie Kitchens coach this team through the rest of the season? This team was playing better under Hugh Jackson. He was fired around this time last year. Get rid of Freddie Kitchens. As much as I rag on Baker Mayfield, I actually think he has potential to be a good quarterback at this level. But he needs direction. Hell, this entire team needs direction. That's why I thought that Greg Williams was better suited to be the head coach. Bruce Arians would have been an even better choice. But management passed on both of those guys to hire Freddie Kitchens because he was Baker Mayfield's choice. You're allowing your second-year quarterback to make your coaching decisions. Typical of Browns management. What a fucking disaster it is right now in Cleveland. Season's over. It's over. At 3-5, they would have had a glimmer of hope. At 2-6, it's over. The Freddie Kitchens experiment is an abject failure. You gave an NFL head coaching position to a guy with 1 year of experience as an offensive coordinator. Not even a full year, a half a year. Zero experience as a head coach at the college or pro level. Hell, this guy doesn't even have head coaching experience at the high school level. You fell in love with the 5-3 finish to last season, in which the Browns never beat a team with a winning record. And you gave your head coaching spot to a guy that's not qualified to make the team's breakfast. And now you're paying for it. All right, that's all for today. I'll be back Friday morning with news and college football picks for Saturday. What a disaster it was this past weekend for my college football plays. 0-3, coming off 2 straight weeks of 2-1. Had a good weekend with our NFL picks, though. Went 3-2. We're still hitting around 53-54% on the year with our NFL plays. Follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Hit the like and subscribe button. Leave a comment in the section below. Let me know what you think of the podcast. I will see you guys on Friday morning. Have a good week.